Welcome to the Fit Woman Formula podcast, where we show women just like you how to reclaim your energy, rebuild your body, and step into you 2.0. I'm Coach Jonathan, founder and head coach of the Fit Woman Formula coaching program. This show is for women who are tired of starting over and ready to finally create results that last. Not just weight loss, but real confidence, a healthier relationship with food, a stronger mindset, and a lifestyle that finally lasts. You can watch full episodes on YouTube or listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you enjoy podcasts. And if you're ready to learn more about how we can help you unlock the energy and confidence of your 20s while dropping 2+ sizes in the next 12 weeks, visit fitwomanformula.com. All right, let's get into today's episode. Some of you are trying to lose weight on an amount of food that can barely support your daily life. And I don't say that to be harsh or to be tough on you. I say it because it's one of the most common things that I see, and it's one of the least talked about reasons that so many women stay stuck. Let's think about this. You're exhausted. You're frustrated. Maybe you're white knuckling it every single day, just trying to stay in control. Or maybe food doesn't even interest you anymore, and eating feels like a chore. You're not hungry. You don't think about food much at all, maybe. And you might actually think it's a good thing. But here's what I want you to consider today. The thing that you've been doing to lose weight might actually be the thing that's making it harder. And it might be the reason that your life feels so hard right now, too. So I want you to think about every diet that you've ever done. At some point, eating less probably worked for you, right? The scale moved. There was some momentum. And so the belief got reinforced. Less food equals results. But then progress slowed down. So you cut a little more. And maybe it worked again for a while. But then it stopped. So you cut again. And this repeated itself over months and years until eventually you're surviving on next to nothing. And now the weight is creeping back up and you're getting heavier. And you're trying to do the same things that used to work, but they're not working anymore. You're cutting calories that are already too low. And you're pushing harder in your workouts, and your body does not have the fuel to support you. And no matter what you do, nothing is moving in the right direction. So as I say very frequently, this is not a willpower problem, okay? This is the predictable outcome of years of chronic dieting and chronic underfueling. And it happens to so many women. And it happens to so many women that we're working with. And that's why they come to us. Now, I want to separate two things here before we go any further. Because when I say undereating, there are two different patterns, very distinct patterns. The first one is what I call restrict and rebound. So this is where you're undereating during the day, which eventually triggers overeating later. So I'm talking to you ladies that can't stay out of the fridge, can't stay out of the pantry at night. I want you to think about what you're eating earlier in the day looks like. And even though it feels like you're barely eating, the swings are actually putting you in a calorie surplus overall. That's a real problem, and we're going to cover that in a future episode. Today, we're talking about something different. Today, we're talking about the chronic undereater. This is the woman who has been consistently eating way too little for years, sometimes decades. And her body has completely adapted to this way of eating. A lot of the ladies that we work with that have the same issue, they're in their 50s, 60s, sometimes 70s. Okay, not always, but many times. And many of them have spent most of their adult lives eating as little as possible. And for some of them, this didn't start with a diet. I'll tell you, for many ladies, without sharing anyone's life story or anyone's business that is not up to me to be doing, it started much earlier than that. Sometimes it came from childhood trauma, things like abuse. Sometimes it came from comments made by a parent or family member or friend or someone that you thought you could trust that made comments about your weight or about your body. Being told you were overweight as a little girl, right? Being made to feel like your body was something that needed to be fixed. Heard so many stories about this. That has an impact, ladies. That has an impact. Those comments have a way of sticking around a lot longer than the people who said them could ever realize or understand. Somewhere along the way, eating less became the only tool that these women knew. The one thing that kind of felt like control. And I want to be clear about something. If this crosses into territory that feels really scary or out of control or a little uncomfortable, okay, that's probably worth seeking professional support. And there are a lot of conversations that I have with ladies that we're coaching where we direct them towards counselors and therapists. And I'll just say a big part of what we're doing is kind of filling the gap because most counselors and therapists don't know a whole lot about nutrition. They don't know a whole lot about how to practically fix these problems. And a lot of what we're doing is filling the gap here. And we're approaching this from two different ways, and I'll get into this more in a moment, but it's from the mindset perspective, which I'm filling you in on a little bit of right now, mindset and emotional perspective. Also from the strategic perspective. You know, for so many women, this is simply a belief that got wired in a long time ago. And today, I want to start unwiring it. I think we're going to kind of brainwash it in a good way, if that's okay. Now, a lot of women have a feeling that undereating might be playing a role in why they're stuck. I want you to think about if you've ever said this to yourself, you know? But look, they're not actually sure. So here's some signs that you need to be looking for. You're tired all the time, even when you feel like maybe you're sleeping okay. You've lost touch with hunger almost completely. You just don't feel it the way that you used to. And honestly, again, you probably convince yourself that this is a good thing. Maybe your workouts feel harder than they should. You're always cold. You're noticing more hair loss than usual. Your mood is off more often than not. Ladies, please don't just chalk this up to perimenopause or menopause, okay, if you know you're undereating, because this is part of the problem here. And maybe your weight hasn't moved in months or even years, no matter what you try. If one or more of those, probably more, I would guess, feel familiar, okay, chronic undereating is very likely what's going on. And let me be clear, these things like the hair loss, sometimes it gets into other serious things like your cycle changing and it's not directly related to perimenopause or menopause. Okay. Some very serious things can happen. This is an alarm reaction from your bodies, lady. This is your body begging you for fuel. This is not normal stuff. These are signs of malnutrition. This is something I really want you to hear. A lot of women come to us and they say, yeah, I don't eat because I'm just not hungry. Of course, you know, I don't feel like eating. Food doesn't really interest me. And sometimes they say it like it's kind of a badge of honor, like not being hungry means they're doing something right. But here's the truth. Your body's just adapted. When you chronically undereat over a long enough period of time, your body starts to suppress hunger signals. It stops asking for food. It's learned that food isn't coming anyway. So you stop feeling hungry. Part of you interprets that as control. Again, part of your brain is saying, this is a good thing. I want to lose weight. I've learned that in the past that eating less equates to losing weight. Eating less is a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's why you feel like crap every day. Again, you might interpret this as control, but it's not control. It is your body waving the white flag. And part of what we have to do when we work with ladies in this situation is retrain those hunger cues. And we have to gradually remind the body that, hey, it is safe to ask for food again. Fuel is coming. That it doesn't need to conserve everything it has just to survive, just to get through the day. Now, let's talk about what this does to your energy. I know for a fact that so many ladies are underfueling and undereating, and they're experiencing things like, you know, at a certain age, maybe mid 40s, going into 50s at a certain age and your mood is not what you want it to be. Maybe you're a little shorter with your loved ones. Maybe you're feeling like you're having a lot of lower days, maybe even borderlining depression, dare I say. That's not a bad word, by the way. Okay? It happens. But a lot of the times these things get conflated with low energy. They get confused for low energy. And I just want to remind you here, your energy is not your personality trait. It has nothing to do with whether, you're a morning person or a night owl. It's about whether your body is getting enough fuel to function. That's the bottom line. When you're chronically undereating, your body has to start making decisions about where to send the limited energy it has. And the things it considers optional get cut first. High energy, sharp focus, a stable mood, the drive to exercise, the drive to make good food decisions, the ability to lose body fat, right? Your body is essentially in conservation mode. Now, this is not what you think in terms of fat loss, okay? Your body's not just holding on to fat and then it's just going to release it or anything like that. That is not a real thing, okay? But it is in conservation mode in the sense that it's really trying to conserve as much energy as possible. It's not giving you energy to spend. It's holding on to everything it can just to keep you going. Again, I think survival for so many of you ladies is the right word to use. I think that's accurate. I think that is a fair word to use. And typically, it's not just low energy. It's not just low energy. It is exhaustion. So, that foggy, dragging feeling where you need a coffee or my energy drink, ladies, right? Or diet soda, whatever it is, okay? Not that there's anything wrong with those things by themselves, but you shouldn't need to rely on these things just to get through the afternoon, just to get through the next few hours. Now, again, this isn't laziness either. I'm gonna say it. I hate when you ladies tell me that you're just lazy. That's bullshit. Okay, I love you, so I'm gonna call you out on it. That's bullshit. Stop saying that. I've said that so many times on this show. Okay, that's something that we just cannot tolerate here. Please drill that into your mind that you are not lazy. Are you making the best decisions all the time? Probably not. Does that mean you're lazy? I highly doubt it. Okay, this is just your body running on empty. And here's why that matters so much for weight loss specifically, because undereating doesn't just make you tired. It makes the behaviors required for weight loss way harder to execute. The workouts, the consistency, the planning, the food choices, the ability to bounce back when you get off track or things go sideways. All of it gets harder when you're not eating enough. You can't starve your way into a body that feels good, that feels strong, that feels healthy. Please listen when I'm saying this. Again, for the ladies in back, you cannot starve your way into a body that feels strong, energized, and healthy. Not gonna happen. Now, let's talk about what this does to your training, because honestly, this one surprises a lot of ladies, because some of the ladies that we work with, they are incredibly active, even though they're underfueling their bodies like this. They're showing up for classes, they're showing up to the gym. A lot of the times too much. It's a really interesting thing, and this has a lot to do with the emotional and mindset side of things. There is certainly a type underfueling, way too overactive, grinding themselves into a pulp. Yes, it feels good when they exercise, but there's a reason that they're not getting the results that they want physically. There's a reason that they don't feel great day to day, okay? And it's just because they're working in a deficit. Again, the fuel is not there to be training like this, okay? So they're working out, they're getting their steps in, they're being consistent. From the outside, it looks like they're doing everything right, but here's what's actually happening. They're not getting much out of those workouts. That's not to say there's no effort. That's not to say you're not working hard. I'm not saying that. But it's because, again, your body just doesn't have the fuel to perform. You want to lift heavy, you want to set PRs, personal records, you want to get really fucking strong, not going to happen eating this way. It's very likely that whether you see it or not, you're going through the motions. You're kind of mailing it in without even realizing it. And I want to be clear, this isn't criticism. The truth is, you just can't perform your best when you're running on empty. You can't build or maintain muscle effectively without giving it enough fuel and food to support it, material to build it. You can't recover properly between sessions. We've got a lot of ladies that come to us that are working out literally every single day, that are eating the way that I'm describing. There's no recovery going on. There's no recovery going on. And what we're going to talk about in a moment is it can be scary to dial things like that back. It can be scary to start eating a little bit more. So when you're under eating and underperforming in your workouts, you're losing the very thing that your body needs to burn fat effectively. Under eating doesn't make you more disciplined. Okay. It makes you less consistent. That's the bottom line. Less consistent and less effective at getting the results you want to get. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about one of our clients. Okay. Her name is Susan. Susan is in her 70s. She is a social worker, which means she spends a lot of her day pouring into other people. How many of you ladies can relate to that? Pouring into everyone else, putting everyone else first. I don't even want to say you're last on the list because a lot of the times you're not even on the list at all, if we're being very honest. But when Susan gets home, she's taking care of a family member with dementia, so more caregiving. And the weight on her shoulders is constant. And before she came to us, she had already been through a lot. She'd had weight loss surgery. She was taking a GLP-1. She had actually lost a significant amount of weight on her own already. But somewhere between all of that and the chronic stress and her own deep-rooted fears around food, which again, we see with a lot of ladies, she ended up severely under eating. And this is very deep-seated, very deep-seated. Okay. Her energy was terrible. Okay. Her weight loss had completely stalled. And she was frustrated because she genuinely felt like she was doing what she was supposed to be doing. Because let's think about it, like up until a certain point, it kind of worked for her. So we sat down with Susan, and the first conversation we had wasn't about cutting more calories. It was about what is actually going on here. And so once we laid it all out, it became pretty clear. Her body wasn't failing her. Even though she's in her 70s, ladies, listen closely, 70s, she's not too old. She didn't need to be pushed harder. She needed to fuel better. But here's where it gets important because Susan had a lot of fear around food. When we talked about gradually increasing her calorie intake, like I mentioned a moment ago, that wasn't easy for her to hear. Okay? This is not an easy thing. It's like, okay, duh, I'm under eating. I need to eat more. Then why aren't you doing it? Because it's scary. It's the total opposite of what you've been doing. And Susan had spent years believing that eating more instantly meant gaining weight. So I'm going to tell you this. We didn't tell her, okay, now you need to start eating 2,000 calories tomorrow. We introduced her to what we call a priming phase. And within a few weeks of making some very small, gradual changes, her energy started coming back. Her activity started improving. Okay. She was walking further, getting it in more consistently. Her clothes started fitting differently. And again, this is a woman that's 70 years old. Okay. I'm going to repeat that because I hear it all the time. When I ask you ladies, what do you think the biggest challenge is? What's the biggest challenge that's holding you back from making these changes right now? It's your age. That's what you think. It's not your age. It's more along the lines of what we're discussing right now. And we're talking about under eating, but what we're really talking about is a poor relationship with food. And so when we help Susan start to fix that, fast forward to today, she's dropped almost 4 sizes. She got into a size 12 pair of pants for the first time in more than 30 years. She recently got into some size mediums, something she hasn't experienced since college. And that didn't happen because we starved her. It happened because we finally gave her body what it actually needed. In other words, she did this by eating more, not less. Now, here's a part of the conversation that most people skip over. I've touched on it a couple times here. If eating less isn't working, the logical answer is to eat more, right? That makes sense. But if you've spent years eating as little as possible, thinking that that works, thinking that eating more means getting fat, that idea is terrifying. And when a doctor or nutritionist says, well, just eat more, and they give you some calorie goal like 1,800 calories, 2,000 calories, hell, even 1,200 calories is a lot for some ladies. It doesn't feel like advice. It feels impossible. So you freeze. You know what you're doing isn't working, but the alternative feels just as scary. So nothing changes. That fear is real. That fear is very real. And it deserves to be acknowledged, which is exactly why the priming phase exists. Now, the priming phase is a period where, truthfully, although it does happen, we're not aggressively chasing fat loss. We are rebuilding. Because I want to remind you, ladies, within the Fit Woman formula, look, the truth is not a weight loss program. Do we do a really good job of helping women to lose weight and keep it off for the rest of their lives? Yes. And like I always say, I am the biggest cheerleader when ladies like Susan are getting into smaller sizes and they're making all these awesome physical changes, but that's not the focus. The focus is in large part what this priming phase is about. It's about rebuilding. It's about energy. It's about food intake. It's about training quality. It's about starting to look at protein. It's about recovery. It's about learning how to manage stress. It's about consistency. It's about finding something that feels simple, not overwhelming, not super complicated. We're getting your body to a place where it's actually ready to lose fat again. So instead of jumping from, let's say you're at, around 600 calories or something like that, and that might sound extreme to some of you ladies. I can tell you it's not. It's something I see all the time. So instead of jumping from, 600 calories to, let's say 1,600 calories overnight, we make small intentional increases over time. We show you exactly how to do it. We make it very easy for you. Because a lot of the times you go into, oh God, now I'm going to have to start eating 9 meals throughout the day, and I have to eat this much protein, and I have to cook again, I have to prep all Monday. No, you don't have to do all that. Something is better than nothing. And that's what we're looking at week by week in a way that feels manageable, in a way that doesn't send you into panic. And what happens when we do that? Every time, not sometimes, every time. I'm going to give a really cool example here, okay? Because real time right now, we've got a lady that is getting ready to start on Monday, okay? We haven't even started yet. And just in having a couple conversations with her, including our kickoff call, which is where I'm walking you through kind of what the game plan is going to look like for the first week and how the app works and, what your workouts are going to look like, how communication works, what's going on inside of our community, all these different things. I walk you through that and we have a couple other conversations. And just within these initial couple conversations together, she's decided to just start eating a little bit more, okay? This is someone that for sure conservatively, or I should say liberally, I'm giving her some extra, is probably eating about 600 calories a day. This is a good example of what we're talking about here, 600 to 800 calories maybe. Today, I said, hey, how was your day? Just as we got started, I'm feeling great. Well, why? What's going on? Why are you feeling so great? Well, I actually ate a little something this morning, and I can't believe how good my energy is. I felt my mood has been better all day long. I got a bunch of chores done that I've been putting off around the house. We haven't even started. We haven't even started. Now, why was she able to do this, though, before we even get started or even show her anything? Well, we talked about it. It's because she's got support. She's got someone there to support her, someone to give her a little bit of clarity, someone to empower her. She's got some accountability. And now as she gets started, she's going to have a community of ladies around her that understands this. So energy starts to come back. Workouts get better. Cravings start to settle. On the other hand, hunger cues start waking back up. Your body starts remembering what it feels like to actually want food and be properly fueled. And then once you're in a better place, we start working towards more intentionally the fat loss so that it actually sticks. If your diet requires you to feel terrible, it's not a plan. It's literally a countdown clock to quitting. It's a matter of time before you quit. So here's something I want you to be prepared for, okay? When you first start increasing your food intake, it can feel uncomfortable. Most of that should not be on the physical side, because if you're feeling too uncomfortable, that means you're probably trying to pack in or cram in or force too much food, okay? But it can feel uncomfortable, not because something is wrong, but because your body is adjusting and your brain is adjusting something it hasn't experienced in a really long time. So one thing you might need to understand is the scale can actually go up slightly at first. And I'm going to tell you, that does happen very frequently. In the first 4 weeks, we'll have ladies do their updates and the scale will go up. And many times, clothes are fitting better, waistline's coming down. Fat loss and weight loss, two different things. So scale might go up a little bit. Why? Because you're just putting more fuel in your body, right? You might feel fuller than you're used to. You might feel unsettled about eating more than what feels safe. Okay, Susan went through this. So many ladies that we've worked with have gone through this same process. The moment where things start to shift can feel scary if you don't know what to expect. And that's why managing expectations is one of the most important parts of my job as a coach. Because no one really prepares you for what the early stages are going to feel like. You're going to think you're doing something wrong. You're going to want to pull back. You're going to want to go back to what feels safe and what feels familiar, even if what feels familiar was really making everything worse. The women who push through that initial discomfort are the ones who start feeling better, more energy, better workouts, a body that finally starts responding again. And it takes a little bit of time and it takes the right support to get there. But generally, it happens much faster than a lot of these ladies think. And that's always really exciting. Now, I want to just share with you how to actually confirm this. You know, if you're thinking that undereating is your problem, how do you actually know? You track. You track your food. Not forever, not obsessively, but for a couple honest weeks. You know, you use a free app like MyFitnessPal. That's what we use. Because here's what happens almost every single time that a woman does this. She realizes she's been guessing, and the guess is almost always off. Tracking for a couple weeks, not trying to hit goals, not trying to eat so much protein or anything like that. Tracking gives you real data, facts versus feelings about what's going on. It tells you how much you're eating. It does show you where protein is landing. It shows you the gaps that you didn't even know were there. It shows you cycles. Shows you what you're doing day to day. It removes the guesswork completely. You stop wondering because you know exactly what's going on. You are undereating. So here's where I'd start. Step one is I would track honestly, just simply track for 14 days. So you know exactly where you are. Okay, 1 week isn't enough. You need to do it for at least a couple weeks. And first, I just want you to look at your calorie intake. Don't worry about anything else other than that. Okay. And again, you're not aiming for any goals or anything as you're tracking. You're simply tracking. You're just getting a read on things, gathering some data. And then what I want you to do is I just want you to add one consistent meal or snack. Now, I'm going to lean towards snack because for most ladies, that's the easier thing. Okay. And I want you to lean into convenience. You don't need to be cooking anything. It doesn't need to be anything complicated. It doesn't need to be the perfect thing. It needs to be something. Just one addition. Okay. Not adding in 1,000 calories overnight, just adding something. And then I want you to pay attention to your energy, your workouts, your hunger, your mood. Okay. Not just the scale. I hope that you stay off the scale during this period, in all honesty. And then the last thing I want you to do is I want you to decide whether your body really needs less right now or whether it's benefiting from having more. And you need to consider going into a priming phase along the lines of what I just shared with you. So again, your body isn't broken. Okay. It's underfueled. And there's a big difference between those two things. So I want to leave you with one thing here. Stop asking how little I can eat. Start asking, how can I fuel my body well enough to become the healthiest, the strongest, the most energetic version of myself while still making progress? Those are two completely different questions. One creates temporary weight loss, maybe, but definitely a life that feels like a constant fight, more like survival. The other creates something that actually lasts. And in the next episode, we're going to stick with eating, but look at it from a completely different angle. We're going to be talking about something that impacts so many women. And again, doesn't get enough honest conversation, and that's emotional eating. So if your food has ever felt like it's out of your control, this next episode's for you. And that wraps up today's episode of the Fit Woman Formula Podcast. I hope today's conversation helped you take one more step toward reclaiming your energy, rebuilding your body, and stepping into you 2.0. If you found this helpful, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I'd really appreciate it if you left a quick rating or review. It helps more women discover the show. Ready to unlock the energy and confidence of your 20s while dropping 2+ sizes in the next 12 weeks without restrictive diets, useless supplements, or living in the gym? Visit fitwomanformula.com to learn how we've helped hundreds of women just like you. I'll see you in the next episode.